Well, the Titans are in Atlanta this week, and it's not Thanksgiving, but I'm looking for them to carve up some birds.
Tyler Rowland here, and I've broken down all the tape, and I'm ready to tell the haters what they got wrong.
Brad Hopkins here. Does winning preseason games really even matter? We'll talk about it.
Tighten up. It's the Titans Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Tennessee Titans every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Music City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Titans Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Titans Squad Show. I'm Julian Minnesone, and as you heard off the top right there, that's Tyler Rowland and Mr. Brad Hopkins. All right, guys. Titans are in the ATL this week with joint practices with the Falcons leading up to their preseason game on Friday, a game in which you could watch on WKRN News 2, the station I work for, by the way, shameless plug. And we're going to be discussing what we want to see from these joint practices and from that preseason game. We got a small sample size. Titans lose to the Bucs this past weekend, 29-7, but a lot of takeaways from there. As we look ahead to these joint practices, what are some of the things that we're looking out for? Tyler, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to B-Hop afterwards.
Well, I want to see continued improvement from Cam Ward. You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to see progression here as he gets closer to the regular season. I think he was pretty solid in the preseason game. I'm sure we can get into the nuts and bolts of how he performed and everything as we lay things out here. But I want to see him continue to get better, continue to improve. Like, that's very important at this stage of things. Week one's right around the corner. And I think the Falcons present some unique challenges and situations that are a little bit different from Tampa Bay. So I think he's in a good situation to have a better week and show those improvements as well.
Yeah, I want to see the Titans take the next step. Next step meaning this is the second week of OTA or joint practices with another team. And we're going to see just how well they compete. We got a little bit of a glimpse of that in Tampa Bay when they got the joint practice work in there. But I also want to see Lloyd Cushenberry, who just got taken off the PUP list. That's the physically unable to perform list, if you didn't know. Just where he's going to join the team, how much they're going to put on his shoulders early in practice, and just see what that line starts to look like as it starts to shape more into the line we're going to see for the regular season. So I just want to see them take the next step and be consistent.
Yeah, I think consistency is a big thing. When you're talking about being a young team, there are going to be some good days. There are going to be some bad days. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where we were talking about that Sunday where Brian Callahan cussed out his team after practice. But then they bounced back by all intents and purposes and had some pretty good practices from what it sounds like out in Tampa. And at least early on, offensively, that second drive there with Cam and company, I thought was something to boast about, at least, or something that good to take away from. So consistency is key. And also, Tyler, you mentioned it, different styles. They're going to play different styles throughout the season. So as many different styles as you could play throughout this year or throughout the preseason to get you ready, that's going to help you when you have to face the Broncos, the Rams, the Texans in 3 of those first 4 weeks of the season. That's an absolute gauntlet of a schedule, and that's going to only help them. You know, I titled this episode, Ward Must Win in ATL. And I'm not necessarily talking about the preseason game. With, you know, we saw a Lions team go 4-0 in the preseason and then go 0-16 in the regular season. What I mean is winning the reps in the practice portions of this joint kind of, situation they're going on with the Falcons right now. That's what I mean by that title.
Yeah, well, I think like we talked about last week, the preseason game isn't what we're really talking about unless we're referencing the depth battles and things like that. When we're talking about the starters and the ones, that's the joint practices that we're talking about. I get all those comments in my show too. It's a preseason game. The guys you're talking about aren't even going to play. Well, we're talking about the practices where the ones are going to see each other and are going to face off quite a bit. So that's always the difference there. But you're right about that. Cam Ward needs to have a good week against the Falcons, but it's not necessarily about the preseason game. As Brad was talking about in the intro, does it even matter to win preseason games? Well, the Titans went 3-0 last year, and then they won the same amount of games in 18 weeks of the regular season. So I don't think that winning the preseason games matter, but things within the process of the week of practice and then with the process of the preseason games do matter, but the end result, not necessarily important, of course.
Yeah, what you want to see in preseason is the consistency of ways to win ball games and limiting the things that cause you to lose ball games. You know how you hear every coach guy say, well, we never lost to the other team. We beat ourselves. In essence, they're not lying because the
Right.
team that makes the least amount of mistakes has the best chance to win the game. And it starts in preseason. It starts with creating a culture of accountability as far as knowing what you're supposed to be doing, right? And then going out there and performing at a level because you've been trained and you practice to get the job done. So let's see if they can take that next step, like I mentioned, in doing the things that help them win the ball games, right? Enriching and creating depth, working on your strengths, but then also limiting those silly things. Like we heard Cam mention, we didn't have any MAs last week in the game. He's talking about his one unit, which obviously is the one that matters the most, but MAs are missed assignments. Those are the things that kill you. Those are the things that create unmanageable down and distances. And if they can keep those at a minimum and continue to grow, then this team has an opportunity, has a chance.
Yeah, they spent that whole offseason eliminating the sins, right? The self-inflicted negatives. That was what that whole competition, splitting the guys into different teams was about. Calvin Ridley even called it the most competitive offseason. They're competing in everything they were doing leading up to this point. We are having already a ton of comments, and there is one I do want to get to when it comes to what you want to see. Here is somebody from Ryan Fields. I want to see Femi get better. Right now, it looks like a huge risk for a second-round pick. What are your thoughts of the way Femi played and what you hope to see from that defensive side, that defensive player?
Well, I mean,
Tyler,
I just got done. Yeah, I just got done, looking at Femi quite a bit. I ended up watching back through again, and I just think it's a misconception on how poorly he played. And I can't talk to Denard Wilson to confirm this directly. Maybe one of you guys stop him at practice. But he probably wouldn't reveal this information anyways, at least wouldn't want it out there publicly. But to me, it looked like the Titans were executing a certain technique on the defensive side of the ball where you crash in with the defensive line to plug up the interior so that there's nowhere to go. It ruins the double teams of the front line of the offensive line, especially Tampa. They run a lot of heavy inside zone, a lot of duo up front where you have double teams. And if you can crash in and kind of ruin the math that they have there, you force the running back to bounce outside. And then you have run and chase linebackers who are athletes like Cody Barton and James Williams. You have a physical nickelback like a guy like Roger McCreary, a cornerback who's willing to tackle like Jarvis Brownlee, and those guys can make the play. The Titans used to do this against Lamar Jackson all the time with Mike Vrabel, where they would crash in against that read option that Lamar Jackson would have, and you create one-on-one matchups on the outside, and you see a guy like Carlos Correa have a good game against Lamar Jackson. It's because Mike Vrabel and the scheme that they're running on defense is putting these guys in situations where they can run and chase and play free, which you hear Cody Barton in the interviews, right? Oh, this scheme lets us play free. What does that mean? Well, you're seeing it with the technique that they're executing. So people are like, Femi's crashing in, he's gap shooting, he's undisciplined, he doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. But really, we just don't know the technique that the Titans defense is trying to execute. And if you did, you'd understand Denard Wilson. And it's like we talked about it a little bit ago. They're trying to get certain looks against certain plays to mimic what they're going to see in the regular season. So Denard Wilson out there is experimenting like, hey, let's try this against a team that runs these plays a lot, and I'll see how it does. And then when we come to the regular season, I have more data to go off of how I want to approach this. Like, it's so much more high level than I think the casual fan sees when Femi's just crashing inside into the B gap, and you're like, why is he doing that and giving up contain? Well, Cedric Gray was late, and he got beat to the outside, and Gabe Judy-Lawley can't get off a one-on-one block in the slot. And then Jalen Kimber has a terrible angle and cuts inside and gets beat to the perimeter. And this happens multiple times throughout the game, and people blame Femi like he played poorly, but really, the other guys on the second level, I don't think, are executing the technique as well, and it's not necessarily Femi's fault. So he had his poor reps. He had one real pass rush rep. And we know that he's going to take time to develop in that way. But I saw him disrupt multiple runs and make plays. And it's like he wasn't as bad as people are saying. And quite frankly, I was encouraged by what I saw out there for where he's at in his development.
Yeah, well, where's your expectation? Is he going to perform like Abdul Carter? So nine rushes, 3 of them for pressures, that kind of deal. Well, that's, I don't know how realistic that actually is. Right. But like you mentioned, Tyler, it's a balance. In other words, the guys in the back end want to make the quarterback hold on to the football longer so the guys in the front end can actually get there. It's a balance. If those guys can be disruptive and get into the backfield, like if Femi were to automatically beat his guy, off the snap, then guess what? The quarterback doesn't have time to set up and throw the ball, and it causes disruption and throws off the timing and all those things. So it does matter what those secondary players do and how it affects the guys up front. But also, I don't know that we have a bunch of Jimmys and Joes that can just get there off of bodies alone. We saw in the Super Bowl last year, the Eagles just basically ran 4 and were just decimating the Chiefs, right? They don't have any exotic blitzes and craziness, and but there are stunts and things that you can do up front to kind of be disruptive. But I think for the most part, Femi's getting himself used to it. And this isn't even the cast of characters that you're going to see in the regular season that you hope to be in there doing all the disruptive stuff, right? But for what we're working with right now, what they have on the field right now as it presents itself, there is room for improvement. Let's just say that. I think Femi, with the second round pick, is going to be somebody I think that develops into a role player, someone that can come off the edge and be disruptive and take advantage of the double teams that Big Jeff and Devondre Sweat are going to accumulate, right? So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for him to win those one-on-ones, which is exactly what you want to do in that situation.
And I think as a role player, we need to have expectations in the proper place. Like, this is something I think we talked about recently on the third down where the Titans' first team defense was out there, and there was the long pass to Emeka Egbuka down the left sideline. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in good position, incomplete, forced the field goal. Femi came off the field because that was a 3rd and long pure rush down, and it was Arden Key and Draymond Jones as the edge rushers. And I think that's what you're going to see in the regular season. Like, Femi is going to be an early down edge setter to play against the run, and he gives them front multiplicity because he can drop off the line of scrimmage and turn the front into a 4-3 as an off-ball linebacker. Or he can rotate down onto the line as an edge, and now you're in a 3-4 front. Like, you can go odd, you can go even fronts and have that versatility because of Femi's skill set versatility. But on passing downs, of course, we should know. He played edge rusher for 6 games in college. He's transitioning to a new position. He's not going to have great handwork and technique and all these pass rush moves in his toolbox yet. He's not going to have those. So he needs to be a physical, early down, edge-setting run defender who can chase backside, set a firm edge wall swarm, as Vrabel used to say, which I think is a great way to look at run defense. Like, Femi can be an early down guy with Draymond Jones, and when it's time to pass rush, now Arden Key can be more of the starter there. That's why they're at the same position on the depth chart, and we know Key is much more of a pass rusher and maybe not as good against the run, and Key is better in more limited snaps than full-time snaps, so it really works out perfect if Femi can be the early down starter against the run and slowly develop the pass rush moves, and then Key comes in and be that rusher on a consistent basis where he's really at his best. It works out best for everybody that way.
Surely some of the expectations are coming with the fact that, there's a lot of hype around the draft class. There's a lot of young players expected to perform right away. And I just don't think that's at least realistic. It's his first preseason game. Maybe we need to pump the brakes on making sure if he's an Abdul Carter or one of these top level pass rushers and whatnot, at least for right now. And Brad, you mentioned something
I don't think
earlier.
anyone's saying that. I don't know that anybody has ever compared Femi to Abdul. If they are, I don't know who they are. They should not be doing that. There's a reason Carter was the number 3 pick.
The comparison was about your expectation, Tyler. The comparison was about what you expect from your young players. So obviously,
they should
setting the tone up there. And of course, you'd love to have that in Tennessee, but it just hasn't shown itself to be the case just yet.
Brad, real quickly, I wanted to get your opinion on something. You mentioned Lloyd Cushenberry earlier here in the show. What are you expecting from a guy coming back? Big dude with an injury down there in your feet. What are you expecting? Something like that, at least early on, the way they work him back in.
I'm expecting him to add 6 years of experience to this offensive line, which is what they need, right? They need, the guys that can work well together, that can actually be trusted to, keep the integrity of the pocket, but also help the quarterback identify the problem areas, right? A lot of times the center will come up to the line of scrimmage and he'll identify the Mike linebacker. Usually offensive lines have the 4 down linemen and the Mike. That's what they usually say, right? Well, he's the guy that's basically telling you who's who and what's what and where people are, and helping that quarterback identify protection. So that way it's just one less thing that Cam Ward has to worry about. So obviously this is a new cast of characters. Dan Moore's in the building now. Kevin Zeitler's in the building. And I want to see Kevin and Lloyd get the kind of reps together that will allow that cohesion to take place, right? Both of these guys are veterans. Kevin way more so. But that experience that Lloyd Cushenberry has, I think that should be featured. And I'll be excited to see what he does as far as going into his second year. Because I thought his first year, despite the injuries, was pretty good. He showed himself to be a pretty good free agent acquisition last year, and I hope he takes that next step.
Yeah, there was that play that the Cam Ward, his first completion to Calvin Ridley, the 25-yard. pitch and catch. Did you guys ever remember seeing a pocket that big last year? I mean, he had all day back there, and that was encouraging because that was without Zeitler in there and without Cushenberry in there. And so that I think is maybe just a small sample size. I don't want to get too overblown when it comes to the results of a preseason game, but that is something that is a positive step in the right direction for this O-line.
1,000%, Julian. As a matter of fact, I was saying that the guys, Charles even talked about it, just how well the protection was, especially in that second drive, right? Now, of course, it broke down as we start to see the other players that aren't starters getting to the role, and they start, it might have helped Tim Boyle get cut. I don't know. But either way, we saw in that second drive, not the first one, where you saw a holding call kind of negate the drive a little bit, not putting it all on that. But 3 and out is not what they wanted to do in that first series. But they came back and put together 6.5 minutes worth of a drive that ultimately culminated in a score. And it was largely in part by the protection that Cam saw and his ability to see the field because he wasn't under duress. So you got to give the big bodies up there a lot of credit. And those dudes, Corey, filling in that spot, and some of the younger players that we obviously won't be calling during the regular season, they did a relatively good job.
And we got to give Tony Pollard credit as well, who stepped in there and helped the interior offensive line with a great pickup on that big explosive play that you're talking about. So that, I mean, if the Titans can get average to better than average offensive line play, it would be such a turn from what they've seen the last 3 seasons. And we saw Cam Ward in college. He had a ton of time in college. He had a good offensive line in college. If Cam Ward has time, which as a rookie, it's probably best for him to be more comfortable, we know that he's going to find a way to make explosive plays. And Brian Callahan talked in his press conference earlier in the offseason and talked about the need for more explosive plays. And I know that every coach would say that, but if you look at the correlation between offensive plays on offense and winning, the best teams in the NFL all have explosive offensive play rates that are at a certain level for the most part. There are always exceptions in there, but that's really where the Titans, if they could just cut down on the turnovers and have a couple more explosive plays, they actually will put themselves in a position to compete a lot more often.
And they are not haunted by the ghost of Nicholas Petit-Frere. That's a big thing, too. All right, on the other side of the break, we're going to talk Cam Ward and also another backup quarterback returning to the Titans after spending time with the team last season. We'll talk about that situation as well when the Locked On Titans Squad Show returns. Keep it here. All right, it's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and the Titan Squad Show are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've also been in a ton of work leagues, and we're all using Yahoo Fantasy. We love the updates, and they're rolling out new features. It's wild, and it's in the best of ways too. So to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. Now, to kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing on Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. All right, fellas, we're back and we're going to talk Cam Ward. 5 for 8, 67 yards, but went 5 for 6 on that second drive and led the Titans to their only touchdown of the game on Saturday. What's one word to describe his performance from Saturday? Just one.
Well, since Tyler's mic'd, I'll go. How about steady? We say consistent, right? You want your quarterback to be consistent, right? That could be a consistently low, consistently high. But what I saw with him was a steady leader that showed great command of the offense. They didn't ask him to do a whole bunch. It wasn't like they game planned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and he was trying to get to certain things and create certain matchups and all this other stuff. But what he did was he got into a consistent rhythm, and albeit because of the protection that we just mentioned in that first segment, but he was steady. And I like that. I didn't want him manically running all over the place. He showed poise inside the pocket. He showed his ability to climb the ladder in essence. But then when he scrambled outside the pocket, showing himself to be mobile, didn't necessarily hit his targets all the time, but at least he was looking downfield, for an open receiver versus trying to turn into a runner and getting yards with his feet. So I liked his faith in trying to find an open receiver and just basically taking the next step in that offense. So I thought it was encouraging. But steady.
I love steady. I was torn. So I got to tell you, I was between professional and resilient. And I think ultimately what's most impressive to me is the resilience. The Titans were at 1st and 20. Didn't even need 3 plays. 2 plays. 1 completion to Calvin Ridley for 10 yards. Another completion to Calvin Ridley for 13 yards. Now we got a first down. After a penalty, how many times did last year's Tennessee Titans bounce back from a 1st and 20, and let alone in 2 plays? Not often. I can guarantee you that. Not only that, but the Titans faced multiple 3rd downs. 3rd and 9, 10-yard completion to Chigakonkwo over the middle. 3rd and 6 in the red zone, where we know early, Julian, you've been at the practices. Brad, you've been at the practices. Early, the red zone periods were a little bit of a struggle. Cam gets down to the red zone. It's tight. It's 3rd and 6, low red zone. Hits a 7-yard completion, gives you a first down inside the 5-yard line, which sets up 2 runs for Tony Pollard to get a touchdown. So I think battling back in adverse situations, a 1st and 20, a 3rd and 9, a 3rd and 6 in the low red, those sorts of plays right there were resilient from Cam Ward. He overcame adversity. He kept his poise and composure. And I think resilience would be the number one word for me, because those are things the Titans weren't able to dig out of a lot of those holes and win in those adverse situations last year. So if Cam Ward can help the Titans do that a little bit more, that would be a massive boon for the franchise.
Yeah, I'm going to go with promising. There was the empty first drive that he had. However, on that 3rd down, Brad and I talked about it in the post-game show. How many times did we see a Titans quarterback try to do too much on a big play situation instead of taking the safe play, throwing it out of bounds, and instead of 4th and 10 at that situation, it would have been 4th and 17, for example. And then the bounce back drive, obviously going 5 of 6, 3 of those to what's been his shadow in Calvin Ridley. And then executing in the red zone, like you mentioned, Tyler. I mean, this team was in the bottom 3rd of the NFL in red zone scoring percentage last year. And I always bring up this example to B-Hop because we laugh about it. But, there was that game against the Lions where they passed the ball 4 straight times in the near the goal line and come up empty. Man low. Yeah. Yeah. And then, last season, their best offensive player was Tony Pollard. Give the ball to Tony Pollard, and they did that. They didn't try to do too much. They weren't flashy in that situation or trying to let Cam show off. They just got the points that they needed to. How many times last year did we talk about this Titans team? If they just took the points that were there, how many more wins they would have had? So I think being okay with the boring stuff, I think that's promising to me, even if it wasn't, a lot of people want to compare it to Shedeur Sanders, and I know that's going to happen. I'm not going to do that. But I think it's a promising first step for Cam.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between being less predictable and being unpredictable. Less predictable means that you do err on the side of caution in doing the conventional things that move the chains and win you ball games, right? Unpredictable is you don't know what in the world this guy's going to do. You don't know what's going to be called. You don't know what in those situations that seems like conventional wisdom where you just hand the ball to your best offensive player like Tony Pollard. Well, let's think this. Hey, they think that we're going to hand it to Tony Pollard. So let's do this. Let's not. You see what I'm saying? So it's like unpredictable versus less predictable. Less predictable is more manageable because I think guys understand more of what they're expected to do in those situations. But unpredictable is like, hey, you got to make sure that you have the full expanse of your playbook open because you don't know what in the world you're going to get thrown at you, and you better be prepared for everything.
Exactly. And we also talked to Tyler Lockett, got some sound from him after the game on Saturday to describe Cam Ward's performance. Here's what he had to say.
I think Cam came out pretty good. I mean, obviously the first drive, we went 3 and out, but that second drive, I think he took advantage of every opportunity, made some really great throws to Red, got us driving the ball down. And so, I mean, that's very promising, and that's exactly what you want to see. We was able to play a little bit to the second quarter, and I think every play that we get is going to help us as we get ready for the season.
Every play that you're going to get is going to get them ready for the season. I think the misconception is he's supposed to have wild success out the gate for a training camp practices, and I think training camp is meant for you to fail. That's kind of the I mean, for lack of a better term, meant for you to fail. That's kind of the MO there. You want to put him through uncomfortable situations. That's why they threw the kitchen sink at him in the practice leading up to the Bucs, because they knew that's what the Bucs defense likes to do. So that's going to be something at least to monitor in Atlanta, how now a team with tape on him and a bigger sample size is going to react to how he plays.
Yeah, real quick. He also dealt with a little bit of adversity, right? Nobody wants to go 3 and out. It was just mentioned there in that sound bite. But what he did was he rallied. He didn't let that, get into his head and start affecting the way that he was playing the game. He just went out there knowing what he was supposed to do and stuck to his assignments and had poise in the pocket. He wasn't under duress like we saw Tim in situations. But then again, Tim wasn't working with the best units out there. So it is what it is. You got to earn yourself the opportunity to play with the best guys on the field. Obviously, when you're the number one pick of the draft, that's going to be kind of an expectation of what you're going to receive. And he needs to get those reps as a young player. But for the most part, overcoming adversity was one of the things that, we really didn't talk much about.
Now we're going to talk about the backup quarterback situation. Titans got rid of Tim Boyle. Life comes at you fast. And bring back Trevor Siemian. Spent time on the practice squad last year. Suited up for some games too, and I believe it was 2020 when he was on the practice squad as well. I will say the only thing I'll say about this is there is less of a gap now between 2 and 3 as with Siemian and Allen as there was with Allen and Boyle. At least that's how I see it. How do you feel about Trevor Siemian joining this team? Is it a big deal? Is it something we need to look into that much, or is it just, hey, we need a body in there?
They just need somebody better than Tim Boyle to get a look at the guys at that level. I think a lot of Titans fans are like, oh, a backup quarterback. They got it because they're thinking about like, oh, we need a better backup quarterback during the season. The Titans are going, we need to get a better look at the rest of our offense with a guy who's a little bit better to do that. Like, that's what this move is to get a better look at the lower guys on the depth chart than Tim Boyle was giving you because he was playing so poorly. The wide receivers, the tight ends, the running back, the rest of the offensive unit. Brandon Allen's going to be the backup quarterback. Trevor Siemian's not beating him out. Like, this is one of those things coming out of the first preseason game that I think the fan base in general is just it's not a conversation that is going to turn into anything fruitful. Brandon Allen is going to be the backup quarterback. He's a coach in there just like he was for Joe Burrow with Brian Callahan. And Trevor Siemian is in there to get a better look than Tim Boyle was giving him because Tim Boyle was terrible. So Trevor Siemian, QB3. I like Trevor Siemian. I was a big fan of him taking over for Logan Woodside 4 years ago because I'm not big on Logan Woodside and what he can bring for the same reason. So I think this is just, they're churning the back end at linebacker. They're churning the back end at IDL. They're like, this is what you do. You churn the back end of the roster during training camp to get better guys, and that's what they've done here. Trevor Siemian's better than Tim Boyle. They're just upgrading QB3 to get a better look at Team 3. It's no deeper than that, even if fans want it to be.
Yeah, they all have their certain roles. Of course, you want the best
Right.
possible backup that you can have in case something happens to your starter, right? A guy that can keep this thing on the rails, and maybe that is Brandon Allen. But you also have to have somebody that runs practice squad, gets those guys the look that they need to get better during the week. So if Tim Boyle is out there making a bunch of mistakes, like the 2 interceptions that we saw, or whatever, I saw a hell of an effort on that one. You almost knocked the ball out at the goal line there, but still, it was problematic, and that you gave it up in the first place. So I think that when you look at just the situation of Trevor Siemian coming in, sure, maybe he came in because he understands a little bit of terminology and the things that Callie does because he has been in camp. Just makes it easier for you to make that transition and getting the other unit better. But that's what the role of the practice squad quarterback is going to be. You've got to go out there and give a look. And if you're stinking in practice, then guess what? You're not getting the guys better, that are going to be seeing the field on Sunday. So you need to give yourself the best options. Now, as far as the backup, the guy that goes in there, the next line of defense, because we're always, every single one of them guys is one play away from getting on the field, right? And you just want to make sure that you have a guy that you feel is qualified to be able to take that step and man an offense and make sure that you just don't go into the dirt. So, Trevor Siemian is, him coming in is not like some, eye-opening situation like, ooh, they brought in somebody to challenge Cam Ward. That ain't the case. So
Yeah, we got a comment on the post-game show on Saturday saying, how can we have those guys, the back-end receivers like you talked about, Tyler, tight ends, guys like that, the offensive skill players, show what they can do when the quarterback play isn't up to snuff for those second and third string guys? And, the response to that would be, well, you could still show on tape that you were open. You know what I mean? you can still show to those other 31 NFL teams that yeah, because we talked about it, B-Hop. I mean, they're not auditioning just for the Titans. They're auditioning for the other teams for a job. And so that could be something. Hopefully, at least we could see maybe a little bit more of what X could do. But that would be the response, at least, to that question right there.
100%. They're constantly getting scouted. Go ahead, Tyler.
Well, my response to that would be there's more to receiver than just getting open. Like I want to see how you do in contested catch situations, traffic catch situations. If you're a guy who excels in those situations, you're not a guy who is going to thrive off separation. You're going to win contested. You're going to be physical, stuff like that. Like that's not enough for me to not upgrade QB3, I guess. And I'm sure the other guys would want them to. But I guess I go back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I'm not convinced that they don't want to go into the dirt if Cam Ward's not out there. Like, I think the Titans do want to go into the dirt if Cam Ward's not out there. I go back to the Bengals. It's just the easiest situation. Joe Burrow tears his ACL halfway through, and of course, knock on wood, you don't want any serious injury to Cam Ward. But if you're the Titans and Cam Ward has an injury and he's going to miss a month or 2 months or anything like that, I don't think you want to win. The Bengals ended up with Jamar Chase in the top 5. This roster is not good. They need high-end, top-tier, blue-chip talents to build out this roster. There's no star players here that they can build around going forward into the future. Jeffrey Simmons is the only one that they have, and you hope Cam Ward is. But, they need high-level talent. It would be best for the Titans as they continue to rebuild towards 2027 to get a high draft pick if Cam Ward's not playing. I don't want to see the Titans win a bunch of games if they don't have Cam Ward out there developing and get the whole point.
Tyler,
is Cam Ward's development.
Your mouth. Just that's got to be a hot take. Titans don't want to win a bunch of games. If Cam Ward loses himself to injury, and this team rattles off 7 or 8 games straight, you're going to think they're ticked off about it? Come on, man. They're not 7 or 8
games this year. What?
No,
they're not going to win 7 or 8 games with a backup quarterback.
Listen, if the Titans win a bunch of games, they'll take it however they can get it. Because if one guy goes down, you don't expect the other 21 to lose their competitiveness and say, "Oh man, we lost our leader. We might as well just go into the dirt." No, that's not
the players. No, of course not. The players won't want to lose. Of course not.
Right. I thought that's what you were saying.
No, I'm talking about the organization, the people upstairs, Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker. They know that this roster is far away, and better draft picks would be better for this team. Just again, the Bengals. Joe Burrow got hurt. They got a top 5 pick. They were able to get a Jamar Chase level talent. It totally changed their franchise. It's going to be a great edge rusher draft class. There are going to be a lot of quarterbacks up at the top, at least 3, as we see every year. The Titans would be in a much better place with a top 5 pick in this year's draft class than having a backup like Gardner Minshew or something or Jameis Winston they trade for, bring him in. And what are you going to win? 1 or 2 more games than you would have won with Cam Ward with a backup quarterback? Like the risk reward of winning a couple more games versus getting the better draft pick totally favors the draft pick for the future of the team.
Think of it like this. Great players have been discovered under duress. We never would have heard about Tom Brady if Drew Bledsoe didn't get hurt. We never would have heard about, Brock Purdy had Jimmy Garoppolo gotten hurt. What I mean by that is that's an opportunity for a dude that doesn't get an opportunity to step into the lineup and show you what he can do. And I understand what you're saying about draft pick and all this other stuff. This isn't Moneyball. But what I'm saying is that the guys on the football field, they're going to go out there and do the best that they can with what they're working with. And if it produces the results like winning a ball game, I remember when 1993, we won our first game and then lost the next 3. And people were just rubbing dirt all over us. They were saying this team was terrible. We rattled off 11 straight games after that as wins and got into the division round of the playoffs before Joe Montana beat us. So it just goes to show you that if a team can deal with the circumstances, regardless of their quality star players being in there, they're going to do what they can to win a ball game. I know you're talking about the dudes that aren't on the football field, but at the end of the day, Tyler, they don't matter. They don't matter because they're not out there on the football field. They're not out there taking snaps. They're not blocking, catching, running, throwing, all this other stuff. Are they there to get the best possible situation for the team by finding the right players that can actually fit the system and style and go out there and have success? Sure. But if that team's already doing it, then that's a situation different. If you lose Cam Ward and all of a sudden you don't win a game in the season, I mean, obviously they need to do whatever they can to get the best players in there. But if they win ball games, despite the injuries, despite what's going on, it doesn't matter.
I think for me, I doubt. Like, I don't see 2019 in this team. I don't think the roster's good enough. So it's like, I can't even see as a possibility that this team would rattle off 7 or 8 wins with a backup quarterback in and Cam Ward being hurt. Like, I just don't think that that's possible, I guess. So maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong about the team.
No, I'm not saying
you know.
it can happen. I'm just saying, I mean, yes, I'm saying it can happen because this is called football. If you throw the
Right,
football
you
in
never
the air,
know.
can you tell me which way it's going to bounce? Nobody can, right? That's just the way football games are played, and you have to go out there and play the game. But if all of a sudden this team finds some confidence because they have been winning ball games and beat somebody that they shouldn't have beat, that's what builds the roster, right? If all of a sudden you start realizing who you are, your identity, the team's perception about itself, and you go out there, you start punching people in the mouth because now all of a sudden people get that fear in their eyes, like, hey man, these aren't the same Titans that won 3 games last year and picked first in the draft. We better be very well aware of who these cats are because they can play.
I think what you could say is if they come out hot and they're 3-3 or they're 4-3 and Cam Ward gets a hamstring strain and he's out for 2 to 3 weeks and you want to make a trade to go get a better backup quarterback because you're like, all right, if we just stay afloat here and get 1 win, when Cam comes back, we're still in it. If that is the situation that they're in, then I could understand making a move for a better backup quarterback. But just, I guess right now, I'm just opposed to it. Let Brandon Allen do what he does.
I think we can agree on one thing. We don't want Cam Ward not playing games this year. That
would
by
be
any
the
stretch of the
worst.
imagination. We are going to talk
worst.
about an injury here on the other side of the break. One of the running back, Tyjae Spears, and how that impacts the rest of the running back room. We'll talk about it when the Titans Squad Show returns. All right, August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. I don't know who Tyler or Brad have as their Super Bowl pick, but I actually like the Rams if Matthew Stafford is to be healthy. I think they could be a dark horse kind of to win that whole thing. Well, visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, fellas. So Tyjae Spears going to be missing a few weeks with the ankle injury there. You hate to see it for a guy like that, trying to get him on the field. He's had really good practices too. Shows great burst of speed in practice, but now this leaves it up for not just Tony Pollard, but Khalil Mullings, the rookie from Michigan, and Julius Chestnut to get more opportunities. Big deal, concern level for Tyjae Spears. What is it for you guys right now?
That was a guy that Callie mentioned a lot, in the preseason to this point, because he talked about how hard Tyjae worked during the offseason, how he's kind of matured and developed into a guy that deserves more responsibility, right? I think we all agree that Tyjae Spears was going to see the field more than he did last year, and that was something that they referenced in going into camp during OTAs, all the stuff. And Tyjae, with his energy, has really kind of made that a topic of discussion about how well he's playing. But I wish the guy could stay healthy. I think that somebody in the comments when we did the post-game show, Julian, said that, is there a Guardian suit that we could
Somebody
put on
just said it again right now.
Which I thought was great. It's very apropos, though, right? But injuries are part of the game. I'm not just going to say that, whatever. But just for what he figured to be in the game plan, that's maybe a setback. But Tony Pollard is going to be RB1, okay? But can you run him for 30 plays, 30 rushes or whatever? Is he durable enough to be a down 1 through 3 guy that you don't have to sub out, and that kind of stuff? So what this does do is it gives Khalil Mullins, who led the team in rushing Saturday, and of course, Julius Chestnut and those guys, opportunities to get more immersed in this offense, show what they can do, and just fill in for these few weeks that the Tyjae is going to be out there, showing some sort of value, if you will. Tyjae, good thing it's only been going to be a 3-week injury, so he just misses the rest of preseason, and hopefully he'll be ready for week 1 to kind of get those reps that we know that he's deserved and earned this offseason.
I think the issue is the Titans desperately need his explosiveness in the offense. They just don't have a lot of people with the juice that Tyjae Spears has. So now that he's not out there, again, that means more wear and tear on Tony Pollard. And we could say, it's a 3-week injury. He's just going to miss the preseason. But now, we're talking about a soft tissue thing. And, you got ligaments and high ankle sprains linger. And we've seen Tyjae Spears throughout his career. I mean, it's a guy who had 2 ACL tears. He doesn't have an ACL in one of his knees. Like, he's just always dealt with injuries. And some guys' bodies just can't, they have the talent to play, but the body just can't hold up the physical demands of football. And Tyjae might just be one of those guys. Great guy, great talent. His body just won't hang up. And I'm personally looking at this like, this is a nightmare because Tony Pollard cannot handle the wear and tear of being a bell cow back. He can be a feature back, a number 1 back in a committee, but he can't handle another season of the wear and tear that he took last year because Tyjae was hurt. And I'm sorry, I'm not high on Julius Chestnut. Maybe Mullings can turn into something quickly, but he's a convert from linebacker at Michigan to running back, so I'm not expecting a ton from him outside of special teams in his rookie year. And we talked about the goal line thing at Detroit last year. They ran 4 straight man beaters. They ran basically pick plays to the flat to beat man because the Lions play a ton of man in the red zone. So they just knew what scheme they were going to see, and they just couldn't execute it over and over. But the reason is Tony Pollard's not a good goal line back. He's not good in short yardage. He barely got across the goal line in that situation. It was tight. Like, he's not a consistent good goal line back throughout the season. So I think this is a year ahead, but, that's how we need to think about rebuilding teams, in my opinion. Running back's going to be a big need next year because Tony Pollard's going to wear down if Spears deals with this throughout the season, and it's a make-or-break year for Tyjae, and if he deals with injuries the whole time, how can you count on him to be your RB2 going into year 4? So I think we're a year away from being like, the Titans need running back help.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing about this was that the plan going into this season from Brian Callahan was they wanted to split the load of carries a little bit more than they did last year because Tony Pollard is not a spring. They have to. Yeah. He's not a spring chicken anymore, and he's banged up at the end of last season, and he was your best offensive player last year. You need him to be effective. However, training camp and this preseason the purpose of it is to develop depth. And at least maybe you can get Khalil Mullings some more reps. He's going to need all the reps he can get coming as a converted linebacker. That's also a big part of this as well. I asked Brian Callahan about that in his post-Zoom call on Sunday. Here's what he had to say, at least about Khalil Mullings and Julius Chestnut now with Spears being out and the importance that those two hold.
They're both bigger backs. They both run with some power, and we like that. And so those guys are going to keep battling. I think Khalil's coming along really well. Again, considering he missed all the spring too, for the most part, it's good to have him out there and participating because I think they're both talented, and I think they got a chance to help us.
And Khalil started off a little bit hesitant, I would say is the word to start off there, but then he ran much harder and at the end, I guess, as he got further and further along and maybe more comfortable in the game. What are you guys expecting? I know, Tyler, you mentioned you're not the biggest fan of Julius Chestnut, but what are you expecting at least about those two guys and what they hope to show you at least throughout the preseason? If it push comes to shove, Spears' injury ends up being longer than just these few weeks.
Well, I think Chestnut can take the carries. He can handle the workload, and that's why he's so good to have around. Because in the preseason, where you got to run these backs, I think Chestnut is just good at eating the carries for the team. He just doesn't have a lot of special juice or wiggle or anything that makes him stand out. I think with Mullings, they could use him in a big way because he is that big-bodied, powerful back. And I'm hesitant to think that he can, take that spot from Spears, at least while Spears is out. No, he wouldn't take it from him long term, but I'm skeptical whether he can hold that spot for Spears, and he's quite that advanced to do that going into the season. I think the Titans would just give all the carries to Tony Pollard and maybe 1 or 2 to Julius Chestnut. But I think for the preseason, it is a good opportunity for him to get a ton of reps because Superman Mullings going forward with his special teams value and that different skill set in the running back room because of his size, I think he could be valuable going forward. I'm just skeptical of his immediate impact in the running back room right away.
Let's get to the nitty gritty. It's about down and distance, and it's about blocking. You know what I'm saying? If it's 3rd and 10, you're not going to be seeing many run plays dialed up. Therefore, that does affect the running back position. If you don't have an offensive line that can open up holes, and guess what? You lose guys like Derrick Henry. When this offensive line was at its worst, we felt that we can compromise and get rid of 22 because you didn't have the kind of season that we expected them to have. Well, hell, it's hard running when guys are standing at your feet in the backfield, right? And that's what we saw consistently. Either one of these running backs, Julius or Khalil, can do exactly what Tyjae's doing by design. But of course, I think there's a little different element that Tyjae brings to the table, his ability to catch out the backfield. So he's got the nice soft hands, his shiftiness, in and out of the holes. He can do a lot of those things. But I think that what you'd see is in manageable down and distances, Cali have the ability to play action, to do all kinds of different things that open up the run game, So I wouldn't worry too much about Tyjae being injured and then bringing somebody in that can replace him. I think the scheme itself will be just fine. Now, Tony Pollard's health is another thing too. Obviously, he showed himself to be a very, capable back, worthy of being a starter in the National Football League, even when he was in Dallas. But like you mentioned, Tyler, this guy is going on year 7. And I hate doing that to running backs, but it does seem like their shelf life just expires faster than a lot of people's does because of the workload that we tend to put on them. So I think that's one of the reasons why Cali's like, hey, we got to manage this guy. We got to make sure that we take some of the pressure off of him, because there's no sense in running him into the ground like we see so many offensive coordinators do. We need him available because he is our best option. So the healthier he is, the better this offense is. But if there's somebody that needs to be filling in, I think that it also relies on those other players that aren't skilled players to get the job done and give them opportunities, and make sure that you can have the whole use of your playbook versus the stuff that you just kind of throwing up against the wall and hope it sticks.
Yes, and Khalil, actually, to Tyler's point about being Superman Mullings, he'll have to be that. His parents actually named him Khalil after Superman. So that's a little tidbit there. Yeah, Kal-El. Okay. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the run defense. Obviously, some things to pick and choose at that. Even without Jeff Simmons and Tavondre Sweat in there, we're going to talk about it as Titan Squad show returns. Keep it here. All right, fellas. So Titan Squad show here is back. At least I think there's B-Hop popping back in there. So Titans run defense gives up 178 on the ground on Saturday. Granted, no Jeff Simmons, no Tavondre Sweat. But here, I want you to hear what Brian Callahan had to say about that number 178, what he thinks of the run defense. Here is what he had to say on Sunday's Zoom call.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously the number sucks. I mean, we're not looking to give up 178 yards at any point in any game, preseason or otherwise. But I think there's definitely some things that we misfit some runs. The later part of that game, we've got to do a better job there and making sure that those not the type of lanes to run the ball that there were. Some of that is we just had multiple issues in a couple of those runs. So got to get it corrected. Don't want to see that very often. I mean, again, 178 yards is 178 yards no matter how you cut it. So not the number we're looking for, and that's got to get improved.
So your thoughts on what Cali had to say and the results from the run defense, even without their two big run stoppers in there up front?
I mean, even the first team defense without Tavon, I mean, the only defense that was missing those two guys was the first team defense. They played the first series, and the Bucs had 3 runs for 9 yards, averaged 3 yards per carry. So in the run defense that actually mattered, I thought the Titans' run defense was fine. The Bucs have a great run game too. So, I guess I know that Brian Callahan has to look at the entire roster. I know that Denard Wilson is evaluating the depth and everything like that. And, after the end of last year, some of the performances we saw, especially that record-breaking game against Indy where they gave up, 300 rushing yards or whatever, and got mossed or whatever, Zach Moss there. But outside of that, I don't really – I guess I feel bad, but I don't care that the run defense was bad with the guys who aren't going to make the team. Like, the first team defense did a good job slowing down the run. Some of the depth guys didn't do as good. The linebackers weren't very good, which is why we're seeing churn at the linebacker position this morning. I guess we could talk about the 178, but I'm just not very concerned about the run defense based on this, because the first team, even without Jeff and Simmons and with James Lynch in there and with Timmy Horn in there, who aren't going to be starters week 1, they still did pretty good against the run. So I thought the run defense, when it mattered to me, was good. I just don't really care about when the run defense was horrific in the second half, with guys who, let's be honest, that's the bottom 30 on the roster. They're probably only going to be practice squad at best. So I'm not going to freak out about run defense from guys who simply probably won't make the team.
Hey, you guys know that there was a pick 6 in the second half of that game, right? We're not really focusing on that, are we? Why? Because it was by somebody that's not going to see the field. At the end of the
He's
day,
not on the team anymore.
Exactly. That performance that you saw giving up 178 yards on the ground, that's not an indicator of who this team actually is. I mean, sure, was Cali disappointed because 178 yards is 178 yards? Yeah, that means your defense couldn't get off the field. But then again, what issues do guys have that are in that role with getting off blocks, lane discipline, the things that cause those crevices that running backs and coordinators take advantage of? That's not going to be the consistency of this team when you get the starters out there. If it is, oh my God, we got a problem. But that wasn't what we were looking at Saturday. Saturday was, obviously you didn't see the stars in the lineup. You know what I mean? You didn't see them, having blitz packages and doing all kinds of exotics and flying around. They were just wanting to go out there and compete. Now, those guys that were in those positions, some of them might have lost opportunities to keep a job. You know what I mean? So being well aware of that, they probably should try and do better this next week against Atlanta than they did in run defense, just because the guys that are out there right now on the football field are trying to get, that W-2 situation as well.
Yeah, and I know it was, a small sample size. And Tyler, I know you mentioned you were happy with the run defense, at least for the run defense reps that mattered, the snaps that mattered. I think it's also just a reminder just how important Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat are to this team too. I mean, this defense predicated on them being game wreckers. And Cody Barton talked about it. We talked about it, I think, two shows ago when we had all three of us together, that the offensive line can't leave Jeff Simmons, and climb up to the next level either. You just cannot do that, especially with Jeff being lighter on his feet this year. I wanted to play a little bit of a thing called over-under with you guys. I wanted to give you guys three situations here and say over-under, at least on numbers for this season. And I think it's appropriate to start with Jeff Simmons. 5.5 sacks. Do you think he gets over that or under that this year? He hasn't reached 6 sacks in each of the last 2 seasons, but he is 20 pounds lighter. Still over 300 pounds, being 20 pounds lighter, by the way. He looks stronger. I think that's an over for him this year, but what do you guys think?
I mean, it better be.
I'll go real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
It sounds like a cop-out to say this, but if Sebastian Joseph Day, if Arden Key, if Femi, if these guys are better on the edges, then what that does is it frees up more opportunities for Jeff to deal with one-on-ones, or at least in situations where he can get to the quarterback, right? So they have to be better on the outside to be better on the inside. Now, assuming that this team is better, with maybe the next year of Denard Wilson's scheme, getting some players in that can complement, like Cody Barton, that are making tackles and flying around and doing all these things, then I would assume that they're going to be able to apply more pressure. Therefore, it will be an over for the 5.5 sacks. I'm thinking that he will get more than 5.5 sacks, because I'm just going to assume that this front four is going to be better than schematically what we saw last year, and they'll be able to do more of that thing. I think the second-round pick is a second-round pick. That's a serious pick, right? That guy can develop into somebody that they can rely on in rotation. Then you keep the level of consistency up, and Big Jeff will find those opportunities. So, I know it might be a stretch to say it, but I'm going to call 8 sacks for Big Jeff this year.
I like it. T-Row?
8 sacks would be a good season. I think he has to have more. And I know that it is a unit situation. Like, the edge rush needs to be better. If the edge rush is better, that forces the quarterback into Jeff Simmons, makes it easier for him to pile up sacks. Like, it all works together. But even just one-on-one situations that he will get, you look at like the double team rates last year, T'Vondre Sweat actually was getting more double teams than Jeffrey Simmons. It's kind of crazy to see. Simmons needs to win one-on-one more often than he won the last 2 years. I think he will do that, so I'll go over, but he better, because for what he's getting paid, the mystique that he has, the rankings he has from the executives in the offseason, like, he is the best pass rusher on the team. He is. So he has to have more than 5.5 sacks if this team is going to have any semblance of pass rush this season. He has to.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so now Cam Ward. I know it was asked during the broadcast on Saturday. 3,500 yards. Over, under. Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels each had that last year. That's what ESPN was projecting him around, over that number. What do you think? Because I might go slightly under that. I might go slightly under the 3,500. the last two big quarterbacks that to at least show something had reached. But what do you guys think?
Is Calvin Ridley Terry McLaurin? How about Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett? Are these guys compliments enough to give a 3,500-yard season to a rookie quarterback? I think it'd be a stretch. And I'm not talking about Cam's ability versus Jaden Daniels' ability versus CJ Stroud's ability his first year. It's just, maybe the complement of skilled players does lend to them having that type of success. I'm not taking shots at Calvin either, because 3 for 3 for 50 yards, that ain't bad. You know what I mean? And we'll see more of that and even better situations as this thing progresses. But, I don't want to put Cam in that category of him having to have the type of season that all of a sudden we look up and say, hey, the Titans are a playoff caliber team, because I just don't think that that's their reality. So I'm going to go under with the 3,500, but it's not to say that he's going to have a bad season. Maybe 3,000 yards, 3,200, that'd be a nice compliment, but it wouldn't be in that space, in that air of talking about a guy like he's rookie of the year for the league, not just the team.
So 3,500 yards would be 205 yards a game, 17 games Cam Ward played. That doesn't seem like a lot, right? Like 205 yards a game. That doesn't seem like a lot. He could get there. But I got to tell you guys, I've been a Tennessee Titans fan for 26 years now. This franchise has never had a 4,000-yard passer. And I am going to sit up here and say that Cam Ward's going over 3,500 in his rookie year. I'm a Titans fan. I know better than that. That ain't going to be what happens. They never throw the ball like that. They never have. Like, that's not what they do, So I would be shocked if a team with this little of, passing statistical success somehow has but if Cam Ward's that guy, if he goes over 3,500, that means he had a good enough season that people are going to be very, very excited. So I'm open to it, but I call it my PTTD, my post-traumatic Titans disorder. I simply I cannot expect a rookie quarterback to come in here and have one of the greatest statistical seasons a quarterback's ever had in the franchise's history, especially coming off of 3 and 14 years. So 205 a game doesn't seem like a lot, but I gotta protect my peace here, and I gotta say under.
Under, yeah, and just like B-Hop said, just because if he goes under doesn't mean it's going to be a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. Last one before we go. Calvin Ridley had 1,016 2 seasons ago, 1,017 last year. Does he get that 1,018 mark this year? I'm going to say yes. I am going to say
$1.
Yes. $1 because just the bond that he and Cam have had this offseason. They're each other's shadow already. I mean, and if Saturday was any glimpse of what we're going to see during the regular season, granted, I know it wasn't against the Bucs top level defenders, by any stretch, but I think it is a good sign to see that he is that safety blanket for Cam, and I think he's poised for a big year. Mind you, 1,017 with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph as your quarterback last year. So
he doesn't get 1,000 yards if he gets hurt. So The only way he doesn't get 1,000 yards is basically if he doesn't play 17 games. You know what I'm saying? So if he plays 10 games, 9 games, something like that, then obviously he won't get 1,000 yards. But if he's playing 17 games, if he's in the lineup consistently, even if he misses one game, he still gets 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I think he gets 1,100. That's what I would say, that he's somewhere above 1,100. I'd say probably not 1,200, but I think 1,100 yards for Calvin Ridley. You're right. Let's be honest. You could argue, and it would not have to be a strong argument to win, that the Titans had the worst quarterback play in the NFL last year. And for Calvin Ridley to switch teams, and Jacksonville had him run an X receiver, he gets to move to his natural Z with the Titans, so he's switching kind of his spot in the offensive scheme as well. A lot of change for Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to settle in great this year. I'll go with 1,100. I think he's one of the, like you guys have said throughout the show, that Tony Pollard was the best offensive player on the team last year. And I hear that. But I actually would go with Calvin Ridley. I think he's the best player on the offense right now. And I hope that with better quarterback play, he can kind of show people, just how good he is. Because you say, is he Terry McLaurin? I don't know, but I don't think it's as different as maybe what someone else would say. I think you put Calvin Ridley on the Commanders last year, he could probably match Terry McLaurin's production, I would say. So I think it's closer than people would say, even though McLaurin, I still say, is better. But I think it's close. I think Calvin Ridley will show that this year.
He certainly seems re-energized. We wanted to thank you guys for spending part of your day with us. The comments were crazy today, kept on coming. We love that.
Yes,
we love
they
when
were.
you guys tune in. Make sure you guys listen to our show here on the Titans Squad show and Tyler's Locked On Titans podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and even YouTube Live here with us on the Titans Squad show on Tuesdays and game days throughout the regular season. But for now, I'm Julian Minnesone. That's Tyler Rowland. That's B-Hop. We'll see you guys on game day later this week.